Kentucky, 1847, a time of hardship, war whispers, and quiet towns cloaked in secrets. Tucked into the hills near the edge of Millbrook stood a grand house, warm yellow with white shutters, ivy curling like fingers across its stone porch. It was known as Millbrook Inn, and it was run by the Cunningham sisters, Eleanor and Ruth. Eleanor, the elder, was soft-spoken and graceful, with a heart for healing. She had once trained under a midwife in New York before returning home to Kentucky. Ruth, the younger, was spirited, clever, and known for her cooking, laughter, and fierce protectiveness of her sister. The two were inseparable, not just sisters by blood, but souls stitched together by purpose. The inn was more than a place to sleep, it was a sanctuary. Soldiers passing through, pregnant girls turned away by family, widowers too broken to speak, all found kindness in the arms of the Cunningham sisters. People said you could walk in with an aching heart and leave with a piece of hope. It was Eleanor who started calling them her wayward doves. Ruth laughed at the name, but she never corrected her. They had no husbands, no children of their own. Instead, they offered comfort, soup, and stories to every soul who needed it. But as the years passed, whispers began to rise. Why did so many people come to Millbrook and never leave? Some said it was because they found peace there, started new lives, and simply moved on without looking back. Others, especially old-town men at the tavern, had darker theories. They say the ground behind that inn is cursed, one man muttered one night. My cousin went there in '43. Never heard from again. Women like that, too sweet, too kind, always hiding something. Still, no proof ever surfaced. The local sheriff, William Darnell, visited the inn once in 1845. He left with a full belly and a softer look in his eye, swearing there was nothing but good in those women. But in the spring of 1847, a storm revealed what had been hidden beneath the earth. Heavy rains flooded the back garden of the inn. Roots were ripped from the ground, and what surfaced was more than just earth, bones. 43 shallow graves. Some with crude wooden crosses. Others, just mounds. Word spread like wildfire. The sisters didn't run. They didn't deny it. They simply stood on the porch, hands clasped, as the townsfolk gathered, a mix of anger, fear, and betrayal in their eyes. I only ever gave them peace, Eleanor whispered. But peace, it seemed, came with a price. The truth, buried for years, was about to rise with the storm. And the story of Millbrook Inn would never be the same. Sheriff William Darnell stood beneath the dripping eaves of Millbrook Inn, his boots soaked with mud and rain. The unearthed graves behind the house glistened in the gray light, a sickly shimmer of bone and rotted cloth. He'd known the Cunningham sisters for years. Shared meals at their table, taken tea on the porch, even brought his own ailing mother to them when the doctor failed. Now, he was staring down the truth he didn't want to face. What is this? He asked quietly. Eleanor looked older than she had the week before. Her hands trembled slightly, not with guilt, but with the weight of memory. Ruth stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes defiant, chin lifted like a soldier. We buried them, Eleanor said. Because no one else would. William frowned. Who? The forgotten, Ruth answered. The soldiers no one claimed. Women with no family. Children born too early. Drifters who died in the cold. We didn't kill them, Sheriff. We just couldn't leave them to rot. The crowd behind him murmured, restless and bitter. Grief had twisted into suspicion. The idea that kindness could explain 43 graves seemed unthinkable to some. You never told anyone, William said. Because they weren't anyone's, Ruth snapped. No priest would bury a girl who birthed a child alone. No family wanted the drunk who choked on his own vomit in our barn. The world shunned them. We didn't. A preacher stepped forward. Reverend Whitlow, red-faced and trembling. It's unnatural, he said. This place, this inn, it's become a tomb. No, Eleanor said gently. It became a home. For a night, a month, a year, we gave them what the world wouldn't. A bed, a meal, and when the time came, a burial with dignity. But dignity was not what the townsfolk saw in those graves. They saw secrets. Death. Silence. That evening, as lanterns flickered and thunder rolled in again, the town council met in the chapel. Most called for the inn to be shut down. Some demanded the sisters be arrested. A few wanted more, revenge. But William stood and said, "There's no crime in kindness." The preacher scowled. Then why were they hidden? Eleanor and Ruth were summoned to appear at the town meeting the next day. That night, the sisters sat in silence, side by side in their kitchen. Ruth poured whiskey into chipped glasses. Eleanor sipped hers slowly. "We should have told someone," Ruth murmured. "They would have come with torches, not understanding. They still might." They didn't sleep that night. And by dawn, someone had already beaten them to judgment. A fire began in the stable. Flames climbed fast. By the time the sisters reached it, it had spread to the side porch. A message was scrawled on the barn wall in soot: "Witches bury the dead." The town wasn't asking questions anymore. It was taking action. But Millbrook Inn's story wasn't over yet. Because what lay in one of those 43 graves should never have been disturbed. The fire was doused by dawn, but the scars it left would never fade. Millbrook Inn's porch was blackened, windows shattered, the scent of smoke clinging like a curse. The Cunningham sisters stood amidst the wreckage, ash in their hair, hearts splintering. Not from fear, but betrayal. The very town they had served with open hands now called them monsters. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Sheriff William Darnell returned that morning, not alone, but with 2 deputies and a county magistrate. He didn't meet Eleanor's eyes. "You're to be taken to Franklin for questioning. Until then, the inn is to be shut down, and the graves fully examined by order of the county." Ruth laughed, bitter and sharp. "They want to punish us for compassion." "No," William said quietly. "They want answers. And they'll keep digging until they find something to justify their hate." And dig they did. By the 3rd day, 37 bodies had been carefully uncovered, tagged, and recorded. Most were confirmed to be as the sisters had claimed, disease victims, war-torn souls, nameless infants. But the town still watched with sharpened eyes, waiting for one body, one lie, to break the sisters' story. And then they found grave 43. It was deeper than the others. Older. The bones inside belonged to a young woman, around 20, with a silver locket still around her neck. When the coroner opened it, a miniature portrait was revealed, and the color drained from his face. It was Isabel Whitlow, the preacher's daughter. She had disappeared 5 years prior. Her father claimed she'd run off with a traveling man, a sinful path he had warned her of in his sermons. Her sudden vanishing had been cloaked in shame. Now, her body lay beneath Millbrook Inn. The town erupted. Reverend Whitlow accused the sisters of murder. "You buried my daughter like she was nothing," he shouted in the square. "She was deceived by these she-devils. These witches who hide behind kindness." Eleanor, from her jail cell in Franklin, wrote one final letter to William. "She came to us broken and bruised. Her father had shunned her for loving a black man. She was pregnant, frightened. She died giving birth. We buried her with the only dignity we could offer. She asked us not to tell him. Said he'd rather believe she was a whore than know the truth. So we let her vanish. We honored her wish." The child, Isabel's son, had been adopted by a merchant in another town, now a boy of nearly 6. The truth, once poison, was suddenly salvation. William read the letter aloud to the gathered townspeople. Silence fell. Then tears. Then shame. The sisters were cleared. No charges. No wrongdoing. But Millbrook Inn never reopened. Eleanor and Ruth left quietly one night, destination unknown. Some say they moved north. Others say they built another sanctuary, somewhere people wouldn't question the weight of their mercy. Yet, the inn still stands. Empty, creaking with ghosts and memory. And beneath its soil rest 43 souls, not lost, not hidden, but finally seen. The sisters didn't offer death. They offered love. And silence was simply their way of honoring it.